Many thanks for staying tuned. It's still the conversation here on Lagos Television. Now, in recent times, the Nigerian judiciary has come under various scrutiny and attacks, not only from the public, but from Nigerians generally, thinking that at the moment, and asking the questions whether or not the judiciary is still the last hope of the common man. Allegations of corruption and concerns about the independence of the judiciary is also at the highest level. These issues have been identified by frequent attacks on judges and on the overall legal system in Nigeria. And that informed the topic for today's discussion, where we'll be taking a look at judgment and frequent attacks on the judiciary. We do have a lawyer and a public relations expert in the studio this morning, Jide Ologun. Thank you for being here on the program today.
Thank you too. It's my pleasure.
Now, let's start this way, because at the moment, a lot of Nigerians are well, I don't have the percentage, but a lot of Nigerians, and Jibola also asked the question before we took that break, that indeed is the judiciary still the last resort for the common man, like always said. And because you are also a lawyer and you are in that field, you'll be able to perhaps give a percentage or, assert whether or not the judiciary remains the last hope for the common man. So I'm asking you, Jide, this morning, are you confident that with the way the judiciary is at the moment, are Nigerians still safe to say, indeed, that is the last resort for the common man?
Ideally, it should remain the last hope of the common man, globally speaking. But let me speak to the common man. If you make reference to the common man in Nigeria now, is the legal system affordable to the common man? So, and that's a big question. And even when you can afford to approach the judiciary for justice, can we raise our hands up and boast that as a matter of autopilot, that justice will be available? And that is why many are concerned. Let me explain. When we talk about this attack, it's about the criticisms. And criticisms will make you improve. So by and large, and apparently, there are issues with the judiciary. And it's not just those who are outside that spectrum of our society that are concerned. Even the judiciary
itself.
Upon assuming office as the substantive Chief Justice of Nigeria, Honorable Justice Kekere also expressed her concern and her desire to drive some reforms within that cycle. And I think basically it's a reflection of the macro environment called Nigeria, because it's not just the judiciary alone. And we must appreciate the need for justice, because justice is, a central moral notion associated with fear and impartial decision procedures, so that when people seek the intervention of the judiciary, it's because they need justice. And if you seek justice and you return with injustice, it has a negative impact on society. And that is why at a point we were discussing jungle justice, when it was perceived by some citizens that even if you apprehend a suspect in court, we call them defendants under the modern dispensation, and take this person to the police, what happens? Will justice be done? So we need to wake up, because Martin Luther King Jr. said that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And that is why you should not be shocked that Nigeria is where it is today. I did a study, and the nation with the best legal system is Denmark, in terms of respect for the rule of law, in terms of transparency. And if you also check the prosperous nations of the world, Denmark is on the list. You talk about New Zealand, you talk about Germany, you talk about Sweden. And these are locations where there's respect for the rule of law. And coming to Africa, you talk about Botswana, you talk about Mauritius, you talk about Rwanda, where they don't joke with the rule of law. And it reflects
in the
the economic
society.
and social profiling of this region. So by and large, we have serious issues in Nigeria, not just in the judiciary, but generally speaking. And I think I want to anchor it on a Chinese maxim in public relations that says the best time to have planted a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is now. So we need to plant a new tree of righteousness.
Judy, I love the combination of your discipline this morning, judiciary and public relations. And in public relations, perception is everything. As we speak presently, the perception out there about the judiciary is not encouraging. And even the CJN alluded to this during her swearing, just like you said, where she promised to restore the confidence of the people in the judiciary. Why is it difficult for the judiciary to be above board? What are the factors responsible for it?
I think it is generic in nature, I must say. It is said that it takes two to tango. I just told you about Denmark. You know, the citizens will not go and be seeking to manipulate the system. So, that is why I said it's a reflection of our society. Let's isolate the case of Rivers State towards the last local government election. Justice Peter in the Federal High Court in Abuja gave out a decision that INEC should not release the register to the Rivers State Independent, exactly, and that the IGP should not be involved, neither should there be provision of
policemen.
Exactly. And in Rivers State, Justice Igwe gave a reverse decision hours before the election, saying, release these materials, go ahead and conduct the elections in line with the decision of the Supreme Court. There was a landslide decision of the Supreme Court on the 11th of July, 2024, granting autonomy to local government areas and mandating or prescribing that elections be conducted within 3 months. And Fubara went ahead to conduct the elections, even though PDP and APC decided to opt out. And he moved to a proxy party, APP. And APP won 22 out of the 23 local government areas. So it's a combination of decisions of the citizens to uphold righteousness. I'm still asking a question. If you are serious as a nation, okay, now, some perceive that as injustice, blaming the judiciary. And of course, you saw what happened after the elections. Some local government facilities set on fire. Right. And these are symptoms of injustice. These are symptoms of injustice. And there's what you call reinforcement theory in industrial psychology. When the battle was on in Rivers State concerning the House of Assembly, the House of Assembly was attacked, eventually pulled down, just for political battles. Who has been held responsible? These are questions. So,
isn't that where the judiciary should come in?
The judiciary, we are just discussing that judiciary now. I understand. Okay, let me leave Rivers. In the case of Kano, you remember the time of Bayero and Emir
Sanusi.
There were conflicting decisions from the court.
Right.
And the NJC revealed that they were going to invite the judges. So what happened after the invitation? Where there are no consequences, you find yourself in what we call reinforcement theory. That means if I break this cup, and you allow me to step out freely from this beautiful studio, next time I come, I can break the table.
Yeah.
Don't break our heads.
I'm just painting a picture of reinforcement theory. You see, I think we discussed it in this studio concerning justice, and it's a very topical issue for me. Look at the case of Ekweremadu. A honorable in Nigeria occupying a top office. But he was found to be involved in a crime in the UK. And before he was even arrested, the investigation had been concluded. And the justice system refused to recognize his honorable status, but treated him as an individual
right,
who has committed an offense. Even our former president, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, wrote a letter appealing to the sentiments of the UK. And the UK government said, no, we are against modern slavery. We uphold the rule of law in this environment. And he was jailed, sadly so.
right.
The same thing happened in the case of Ibori, former governor of Delta State. Even in his own case, after serving a 13-year jail or thereabout, when he returned to Nigeria, he got a state pardon. I was in the Supreme Court the day former governor of Plateau State, Dariye, had his conviction for corruption confirmed by the Supreme Court. I was in the Supreme Court that day. What happened eventually?
It was
state pardon.
Right.
So and where there are no consequences, you can expect the small tree to grow into a mighty tree. And the elders have a saying that the best time to tame an Iroko tree is when it's young. When it's old, you have to pour libation and sacrifices.
Jide, for you, I mean, we can sit here and then, you know, attack the judiciary for as long as we can.
We are not attacking the judiciary. For the record,
not attacking in that aspect, I mean, but just criticize. Okay, let me use the word criticize. But here is my question. There are three arms. We have the executive, we have the judiciary, and we have the legislature. And bulk of those who make up the executive are politicians. Is it safe to say that this set of politicians who are in the executive arm of government could also be responsible for putting twisting the judiciary and putting the judiciary in that circle, or boxing the judiciary where the judiciary is at the moment, and making the judiciary look like the scapegoat in front of the citizens?
You know, I won't flow in that direction.
Okay.
When you look at the fact that God made us as human beings with the capacity to make decisions.
Okay.
In fact, Isaiah chapter 1 verse 19, Isaiah 1:19 says, if you are willing and obedient, you will eat the good of the land. So there's this willingness of man to do whether what is wrong or
what
right.
is right.
And the obedience. Let me bring in the case study of King Solomon, which is well known in the scripture. You know, that should be in 1 Kings 3:16. A case was brought before this king of a living child and a dead child. And two men were fighting that, the dead is not my child, the living is my child. And the king, who has obtained wisdom from God, had his chiefs around and people around. But he decided to cue on the path of wisdom that, okay, as he was inspired, give me a sword, let this child be divided into two, and I divided, I have two dead children. And the real mother said, no, spare the life. And the king said, that must be the mother. So if you want to do what is right, pressures should not make you do what is wrong. Nelson Mandela was in jail for 27 years just to fight for the release of his people from apartheid. So even though it takes two to tango, that the two must be willing to tango. You see, I think I've also given this pictorial expression in this studio, that no matter how thirsty you are, a cool mineral is placed before you, and at the point of drinking, a young child comes to drop feces inside that drink. Your thirst will disappear.
It will.
It's just because we have not been able to profile corruption.
Okay.
Corruption destroys. And it's so sad. If you look at Proverbs 14:34, Proverbs 14:34 says, righteousness exalts a nation. I just gave us the profile of Sweden. Well, look at all this, Switzerland, you know, Norway. These countries are doing well because they do the right thing. You know, I get this simple expression. I was on vacation. I go to Times Square in New York City, and we needed to catch a bus to Maryland, and I thought it was like in Nigeria, where you go and say, bail me out. And the man just looked at me that you were expected to have booked
your ticket.
You know what I mean? So, and he looked away. Yeah.
Right away.
Exactly. So do what is right.
Right.
So whether there is pressure on the judiciary or whatever, those who want to stand firm will stand firm. I give this example. You know, I was in legal unit of CBN at the age of 23, young lawyer. And I recall I was handling the staff housing loan project then. And somebody came and wanted me to go and confirm someone else's title as his own at that age. And he offered me an envelope, actually. I looked at him and said, "Sir, I wasn't brought up that way." And I walked away. Did I need the money then? Yes, but not that kind of money.
Okay.
You see, so if we decide, I've given us the example of UK. Go and look at UK. Boris Johnson was grilled like a primary school pupil in the parliament.
No preferential treatment. Even
when that lady came in, she looked at the assignments and realized she could not cope. And she stepped aside. There was election in the UK on the 4th of July, 2024. Many people didn't even know there was an election.
Right.
And this was an election that stepped the incumbent aside. So those are regions that are serious. Perhaps that is why they colonized us. And talking about the judiciary, I did a research. The history of, in fact, the first Supreme Court in Nigeria, which was in the Lagos colony, was established in 1863 by Ordinance 11 of that 1863. So we are not talking of a judicial system, but again talking about foundation. What led to setting up these structures? Because the foreigners who were in the country doing business realized that at some points when they had to resolve disputes with the indigenes, it's as if their locals favor them. So the foundation itself is one thing, but we have the mandate, just like those who blame the colonialists for our poverty now. The colonialists discovered crude oil in 1956 in commercial quantity, even before our political independence in 1960. The first refinery was commissioned in 1965. And so what is the problem of they've left everything to us? So if we cannot manage our resources, so we blame the colonial masters. And now they are at the advanced level of colonizing us. You know how many billions of naira we spend in school fees for students abroad? What about medical tourism? So these are issues of our time. So if we need to re-engineer the departments of our national life for prosperity to manifest, why not judiciary inclusive? And like I said, there was a time, let's face the reality, even justices of the Supreme Court rose up in protest that there was corruption here, and they rolled out their plans. What happened? The Chief Justice of Nigeria then was asked to step aside. I mean, that is, you know, I don't want to go too deep into some of these things.
Just a quick, the role of the NJC in all of this, because again, we've talked about the facts that there are choices to be made. And so as a regulator, the NJC, what should they be doing that they're not doing?
The NJC is involved in the appointment, the oversight, and the discipline of judicial officers. Right. And the Chief Justice of the Federation herself is the team lead. And their responsibilities include, in fact, the totality of the responsibilities of the NJC is to give us a decent legal system in the country through sanitization and discipline and everything, which they have the mandate to fulfill. But you see, Aesop, a wise man, said, after much is said and done, more is said than done. You know, and some have told us that Jide is because you are not there.
Because you are not,
which is another factor in Nigeria. It's because you are not in here to come and experience the pressure. But I know Mandela was in there, and he stood in there to say, this I want to achieve for my people. And our great leaders, I respect you all, but please open your windows and look at where Nigeria is now. We are in a very turbulent season, and we do not deserve it.
Okay. Okay, Jide, how much of sanity and integrity can be restored if the judiciary at least enjoys some level of independence?
The independence is on paper. In fact, let me say the judiciary is the most powerful of
the three arms.
The three arms. Because they interpret the law. They are the custodians of justice administration. You know what I mean? And I will confirm this. When after the general elections, all the aggrieved went to court. Right. And the court decided that this is the winner. So who stopped Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu from approaching the Aso Villa? So, and that's just to wake up the judiciary, that you are highly influential in this mix. But please, let there be righteousness. I'm also not comfortable being in this constituency when we are asked questions of flying decisions, you know, all this window shopping.
Right, and then,
you know,
court of coordinate jurisdiction.
It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing, really. But like I said, those who are there are individuals, and we are all subject to our consciences. But it's really embarrassing. And one thing I know is that the corrupt will be ready to pay anything for their corruption. But again, in Section 15, subsection 5 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended, what is stated there is very clear. It says the state shall abolish corrupt practices and abuse of office. And until there are consequences, you know, I don't know where we go. Like I pointed out, if there were allegations strong enough to remove the CJN from office, then those allegations should be strong enough for prosecution. Are you
implying that with even if the judiciary should get its absolute independence, things won't get better?
Judiciary has independence now. It's because of
Is it making use of it?
And that is another thing if the judiciary is not making use of it. What we learned right from primary school was these checks and balances. Three arms of government, balancing each other. So the and in the Constitution, they are not combined. The executive power is in Section 5. The judiciary is in Section 7, Section 6. The lawmakers, they are in Section 4. Then the local government, Section 7. So they are separate powers. So if you surrender your power to another arm because of greed, then you can only be brought to disrepute.
But the judiciary does not have financial independence.
But recently, the president, by his initiative, the remuneration of the judicial officers have been increased by 300%, by virtue of which the CJN should be earning about 64M, annually. You see, so, and it's not really about this financial, look at the local government autonomy now. That money will be given directly
to the chairman.
Exactly. You can see now, I even read, chairman was complaining that the governor is asking that she come and swear to oath of secrecy. And so it's not in the theory we have. And I said it here, if you remember.
Yes.
That I hope some chairman will not even collect that money and take it to government.
Take it to the government.
Yes. This is the money so that I can remain politically relevant. Until we subdue politics and allow governance to be the main driver, we are going nowhere in this country. Go and check those countries I have mentioned. It's about service to the citizens. Service. Look at the UK. When this debate on Brexit was ongoing, David Cameron's position did not fly. And the man resigned as Prime Minister because he felt that it was even unethical for him to go and pretend in office. Because I'm not in support of this. But what do we find here? Promises that are not fulfilled.
Okay.
So those are, we are all involved in this. If you want good for society, contribute that good. And if anything bad is coming, reject it, turn it down.
Okay. How much of pressure is the overload and delayed cases also putting on the judiciary?
Heavy pressures, I read the number of cases backlog in Rivers State. I was amazed.
And yet that particular case got speedy hearing.
You see, in fact, there was a time some lawyers were complaining that they should finish their tribunal and come back and attend to
cases,
the civil cases and things like that. So it's a matter of prioritization, really. You know, and from what Chief Bode George mentioned, I mean, in those days, I remember my mom's very good friend and classmate was a magistrate in Akoko. Hey, Adoju Telego. He was like a demigod. One day, a driver hit his vehicle. It took my mom to go and deliver that driver. You hit magistrate motor. So those are days of honor.
Right.
And those days are still here. Because, like we know about law, law is dynamic. But the players, the custodian of justice administration, what exactly do they want to deliver to the society? And we don't have all the time. By expansion, you will now begin to bring in the economic situation and things like that, the global environment within which they operate and the expectations of the society. Some of them have very huge, I've said it, in this country we have a dependent economy. When you prosper in a family and you have to carry the weight of the society, your extended families and things. So I think we should focus on prosperity. I'm still asking this big question. What is the offense of this country in having the largest deposits of proven gas in Africa? So why should we not prosper? The gold deposit in Zamfara, the second largest deposit of bitumen in the whole world, between Ondo State and those riverine communities. So it's about how we administer ourselves. But like I mentioned, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. If you are there now, whether in the National Assembly, whether in the judiciary or whatever, and you seem to be benefiting from injustice, one day injustice will knock at your door. And you realize that you are stranded because you've not done much to promote justice. Right. And I think we should all reflect on this.
Okay, another worry for me is the long journey to justice in this country. How dangerous is that for our development as a nation?
It's dangerous, but not all journeys are long. Right. Like we have mentioned here, go and steal the telephone of a commissioner, you will know that justice is not a long journey. In fact, a summary decision, within 3 days, you are there. It's also the culture we have built. So let's just, honestly speaking, by God's grace, I'm 59 years old. When I look back at even the good times we have enjoyed in this country and how it used to be, there was a time in this nation, I would just feel like I should see my father's house in Okakoko, Ondo State, the capital of the world.
Capital of which world?
It's in the center of the world. You need to come and enjoy the Pick my keys around 3 a.m. because I will project how many hours that I should wake my brother on the bed. And these things were happening.
Security was
we're not afraid to move. We mix. I've been to almost all parts of this country. Arochukwu, Meduguri, Augi is inside after Arugungu, Sokoto State. I've been to places, but look at where we are now.
By road?
Yeah, by road, by air. Nigeria is my lovely country. I love Nigeria.
Before we wrap up this conversation this morning, 2 things I'll quickly like for us to touch on. One bother again for a lot of Nigerians, although you've said that the judiciary is independent, but a lot of people are also worried about the manner which judicial appointments, into the places of chief judge. And things like that. People always say there are political connections and all of that. So I'd like for you to speak to that fact. And if we're to rise above all of the issues that we have at the moment, how can the judiciary build confidence again in the minds of Nigerians?
Talking about the appointment, I've mentioned it partly. The Judicial Council we recommend to the President, who we claim has the power to appoint, who will now present this to the National Assembly for confirmation, and you have the same replicated at the state level. And of course, judges are drawn from the bar. When we say the bar, the agbejorus, and the bench is where you have the decision maker. So it's all about us, and that is why I'm more interested about the values.
Okay.
When you go into somewhere with values, you know, you look at Genesis chapter 41. Joseph came with the value of integrity. So when he had to manage the resources of Egypt, he did not embezzle. You know, he did it effectively to the glory of God, you know. But that was not the same case with Gehazi, who became the grandfather of lepers. So it's all about values. And we talk about your personal values. We talk about the societal norm. What is accepted in this country now may be corruption.
Right.
And it's so sad to realize it, you know, and that is the truth. So how do we turn around? We look at systems that will prevent it. I've given some examples here. So we can imagine that I mentioned Denmark as a country with the foremost legal system in the world. So you can imagine someone like Betty Edu embezzling or alleged to have embezzled billions of naira meant for humanitarian interventions and poverty alleviation in Denmark. In fact, she wouldn't think about it. So these are issues. So imagine Denmark or Sweden coming out to say we have identified about 400 sponsors of terrorism and none is brought to justice. These are issues. So it's all about what we choose to accept. But let me say this. Collectively, between Section 4 and Section 7 of the Nigerian Constitution, the governance structure is pulled together.
Okay.
And what Section 14, subsection 2 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended says is that the security and the welfare of the citizens shall be the primary purpose of government. Right. And that cannot be fulfilled except there is justice.
A very quick one before you go. The promise made by the CJN during swearing in, how do you see navigating this murky water of politics and corruption facing the judiciary as we speak? Going by integrity and antecedents.
All I can wish her is the best. But let me leave us with Habakkuk chapter 1 verse 4. That is if you are leaving me to go. Habakkuk chapter 1 verse 4 says that the law is paralyzed because the righteous is hemmed in by the wicked and they prevent justice from proceeding. You can read it. Habakkuk 1:4.
Okay.
You know, it was my passion about this country that led me to that scripture. And since the day I read it, I said, oh, no wonder. And that is why when Jesus was to be crucified, the people said, release to us Barabbas.
Okay. So I'm sure that Jay has used the scripture to paint a picture this morning. So you can
but justice, righteousness exalts a nation. So if we have a group of leaders who desire prosperity for this nation, they should focus on righteousness.
All right. Okay, thank you so much, Jide Ologun, for finding time to be here with us on the program today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And of course, what all Jide has said today is the fact that judiciary must also ensure that they stay on top of their game and not be influenced by all forms of pressure. We'll take a quick break. We'll return. It will be time for us to take our Lagos conversation.